Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited about this panel on decentralizing financial services. Today I'm joined by Ameen from Spankchain, probably the least bankable company in the world, putting adult entertainment on the blockchain. David Knott, researcher at OmiseGo, and Youree from WPA, or W Foundation. And they created an application which allows rewarding people for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, right? Maybe you could tell a little bit about what you define as decentralizing financial services. How do you understand that?
Removing single points of failure. So in in traditional finance, essentially it's a house of cards. And so you take the happy path and everything works correctly. But then when something breaks, it all comes crashing down. And oftentimes you need nation states to get involved. Or nation states can be toppled if it's bad enough. So essentially looking for those kind of systemic points of failure and then trying to distribute them.
Yeah, I would think that decentralizing access to financial services is really important too. For example, Spankchain is the least bankable company on the planet that's doing nothing wrong, where you sit at the intersection of cryptocurrency and adult entertainment. And so while there are some banks that are cool with adult, they're not cool with crypto, and likewise in reverse. And so for us, being able to access financial services means like holding something like DAI, which we have several $100,000 of, and it allows us to get price stability as a service. Whereas we can't get a traditional bank account because that is a sort of centralized cartel where there's pressure put on banks that to not allow companies like ours to get access.
Last but not least, if I were to add decentralizing financial services, I also come from the financial sector prior to doing this nonprofit charity. It's about shifting the power game. It's giving more opportunity to the rest of the population in the third world even. Giving them access to different type of financial services. The cross-border transaction is also another sector where if they were to have a job somewhere else, the transaction fee is huge. That's something that we can decentralize.
Yes, without a doubt, that's super important. And I really think the advent and the kind of takeover of mobile technology and kind of the emergence of crypto essentially allows us to almost skip or circumvent traditional finance a lot of times and offer equivalent services to people who have never kind of been captured or people with whom the traditional system doesn't value that much.
Right, so when I was trying to get a bank account for my cryptocurrency company, the bank just told no. And when I asked them why, they didn't give me any explanation. They were like, we don't have to explain to you why we are not going to give you a bank account. But essentially it meant that I wouldn't have access to the economy, and a very similar situation for Ameen. Can you guys give a concrete example of a decentralized financial service that you are currently seeing in the market that is very interesting and that opens up the opportunity to allow more people to enter the economy?
Well, I have to talk about my W Green Pay.
Completely okay.
Yes. We're going to launch the open beta application. This is like a social networking service. Similar to Instagram, you do environmental actions and you receive points. And receiving points is also very decentralized. We don't evaluate. There is no central somebody. It's a evaluation forum by the others. We receive the points, and you can receive W Green Pay based on your points ranks. And using this payment, for us nonprofit charity preparing this W Green Pay, the application is called Hushi application. This crypto financial service is very important because we want to decentralize this platform, not just to limit in Korea, but worldwide. We would like to have anyone that contributes to environment, reducing greenhouse gas, be able to receive this currency and be able to use it everywhere, anywhere, without going into fiat to other exchanges.
I mean, can you maybe explain a little bit what it means for adult entertainers to use your platform and not have to deal with centralized financial services?
Yeah, so people, adult performers can use our platform and earn in crypto. And one of the benefits of using our platform is that we have payment channels. I think still the only working payment channels on Ethereum. It's been live for 6 months. We're about to launch ERC20 support. So when they use that, they can get paid instantly. There's no chargebacks. So a big problem in the adult world is that it's a high-risk business. There's a lot of people who will pay for something, and then there will be a chargeback, and then they'll lose all of the money for the services they provided or the content that they've sold. So being able to access crypto means that they can accept payments, and when they accept those payments, because it's crypto, they're not going to have their bank account shut down. PayPal's not going to close them out and freeze their funds for 6 months, which is something that happens all the time, and that's really important to them. It's whenever I'm able to give the gift of crypto for the first time to an adult performer, it's their first time ever having sovereignty over a digital money that is in their control. Nobody can take away from them, and that's really powerful for them to be able to do.
And the first, but I think we could be the second. On our application, we have a shopping mall integrated, and our entity also invested on a company called Zix. It's a company that gives customer experience of using crypto to digital currency without friction. So just changing into Starbucks gift cards, Amazon gift cards. Their sister company has the huge volume of corporate gift cards, about 400 brands. So on our application as well, using W Green Pay, with the integrated shopping mall called Hushi Mall, you'll be able to just use W Green Pay to purchase those gift cards and just use it on offline and online.
Yeah, that's exactly something that we're looking into for our community as well, because it's really powerful to be able to not even have to use a bank, right? To get around the whole thing by getting crypto and then selling the crypto and getting gift cards.
And you know what? I met Zix guys from one of these panels. Maybe we could add something.
Looking forward to it.
So these are some great examples of how decentralization in financial services can help people. But what about the criminals and the money laundering? Like, can regulation and decentralization work hand in hand, or are they doomed to work together? What are your thoughts on that?
For this, I have to speak from the financial services perspective.
That'd be great.
When I was working in the bank, I also worked at a commercial bank. They have a very inefficient system about doing KYC, AML checks. Banks obviously do not share the information, so every bank has this junior analyst sitting down, just reviewing this client's past history. Of course, there are certain platforms, but still, there are a lot of subjective potential reputation risks, so they're just Googling if there's something wrong with the CEO, the chairman. Highly inefficient. Of course, in the cryptocurrency, because this is, this lines of keys of wallets, there is a risk there. But for the banking sector, using blockchain, if this, banks share the data about AML, KYC, I'm sure they could be super efficient. And with that system, maybe this could be another problem that we can challenge.
David, do you have any thoughts on that? It's a very interesting topic, I think.
Without a doubt. I personally don't want to burn down the old. I want to update it. And I think the most effective way to update it is by providing another solution that is an alternative, but that also complements it as well. I don't necessarily see like regulators and people who are working in the crypto space as having to be opposed. I think they can be, but generally, I think it's more just that regulation takes a lot of time usually
Yeah.
moves a lot slower than innovation. So to me, it's just a matter of working with them and educating and giving them the space to help shape policy so that it doesn't stifle innovation in the near to midterm.
Yeah, in fact, I do completely agree. As nonprofit charity, we had an experience of helping the refugees in Syria. Obviously, this is a sanctioned country. We're just trying to help those people that just basically doesn't have anything. We're trying to build a school so that kids can have education. Transferring funds to this country, the sanctioned country, even if no matter how much you try to prove that you are doing something good, it's just simply very difficult. Crypto is something that maybe can solve the problem.
Right, but how would we stop criminals if everything is decentralized and the lawmakers or the regulators cannot stop them?
I mean, this is sort of like on a spectrum, right? Like at the very far end of the spectrum, you have fully anonymous private cryptocurrency transactions where it doesn't really matter what anyone thinks. You can use them. Criminals will use it. Bankers who are helping criminals will use it. Bankers are by and far away the largest money launderers on the planet, right? Like HSBC got caught money laundering something, $80 billion or something for like drug cartels. No one was sent to jail. I think they were fined like a week or two of revenue. It's a total joke, right? Like me, I'm processing, in the tens of thousands of dollars of transactions per month. If you put me against the wall and force me to provide like serious AML and KYC, like I'm not going to be able to operate my business, right? We already have some amount of KYC. Like if you're talking about serious consumer adoption of cryptocurrency, right? The top of my funnel is only people who already have crypto, right? So 99% of the people who might adopt our site, they get to the site and they're like, oh, I need to buy Ether. How do I do that? And they go to Coinbase and they're like, oh, I need to put up my ID. I need to connect my bank account so that I can pay for my porn. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. So, all of crypto is currently being held back by this. I think,
how would we go about solving that problem? It's a very interesting dive into the next topic. So.
I would say two things. First of all, what is a criminal? In most countries, quite frankly, like many crimes are kind of bullshit because like laws are based off social norms, and just like with financial regulation, just regulation broadly, so like criminal regulation as well also tends to lag fairly far behind. And so that's one, but yes, there are crimes, and so they do have to be dealt with. One thing I would say that is kind of super important to note, and that more and more people are beginning to realize, is that there's a whole spectrum within crypto. As you said, on one side of the spectrum, you have these essentially privacy coins where they are impossible to track. But like, that's not ETH, right? Why do we need insane KYC to buy ETH? ETH is trackable.
Tamper-proof.
Yeah.
So it's not like a black and white, centralized, decentralized, but it's a full spectrum in which...
It's a spectrum of how, like, essentially each like protocol has different trade-offs. And so I would say thinking about that carefully and then picking the trade-offs that are right for your business. So maybe for a lot of businesses, maybe they just don't want to deal with accepting privacy coins, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't accept all crypto.
All right. So an argument which is often brought up against decentralization and against Bitcoin or Ethereum as a potential payment method is that it's a lot less efficient than centralized counterparties, such as Visa or MasterCard. How can we overcome this, and is it something that is possible to overcome?
Well, I'm trying to overcome with one of our partners. It's a company with the internationalized standards, just like Visa and MasterCard, that's the Kona I card. They have built a kind of cold wallet crypto prepaid card, which could be just used at any post worldwide. We need this type of a solution. Well, current system, the transaction speed and everything, there are limitations, but we've been evolving, so we're getting there.
I would be very curious with like current like blockchain usage costs, which are relatively expensive, if blockchains as they are today are more inefficient than say Swift with the stranglehold it has over the world economy and how it's used to essentially force nations into submission and people into submission.
So there's sort of two aspects of this question. One is like the technological scalability, right? And it's like, well, if you use layer 2, something like payment channels, you could in theory have infinite throughput, so it's like just as scalable as something like Visa today, right? When you're using layer 2 in that way, it ends up being bound by the people who are actually opening channels, closing channels on chain, right? And settling up. So if Ethereum has 15 transactions per second, then how often do I need to actually do that? If it's like once every 2 weeks and you have a bunch of people, then like maybe that's fine, right? Today. Would that work for all applications? If this takes off, then no, you'd still eventually run into layer 1 scalability limitations. But once you update that, if you're integrating with layer 1, then you're actually going to have way more transactions than something like Visa. And the transactions can also be for like much smaller values. Like something like Visa charges each transaction 3% and 30 cents. And so it completely eliminates any type of value transfer basically under $10. So micropayments are a non-starter because you have to pay 30 cents anytime you want to make the payment. So that's one part. And the other part is riffing off what David said about Swift, like, not the country I was born in, but the country my parents are from, Iran, was actually just cut off from Swift. Just in the nick of time, a month ago or so, they also legalized Bitcoin mining. So for them, something like Swift is not more efficient than Bitcoin because they can't use it. And so to the extent that the first world uses its power and leverage to oppress and exclude the rest of the world, it's going to create the incentive for the rest of the world to adopt and improve on blockchain technology and use Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that.
How will we move to this decentralized economy? For a lot of people, for millions around the world, probably in Korea and in the US first world countries, banking works completely fine, right? My parents, they don't ever have an issue with banking, can pay their mortgage, no problem. How do we convince these people to pay their coffee in Bitcoin using layer 2 Bitcoin solutions, for example? How do we move them to a decentralized economy?
I think now we have to talk about incentivizing the users. The shift of this payment methods is actually happening very quickly. Korea still stuck with the plastic era. Japan, cash. China, mobile payments. Even these quite advanced countries have different path to payments. Using cryptos, I think it might happen fairly quickly even in the third world. That has less stability of their currency and the valuation. This crypto, what we are trying to do on our thing, we give discounts. We buy the huge volume of corporate gift cards in advance, giving the retailers of the working capital in advance, and give the users the discount in order for to have mass adoption case on our platform. And also our coin, you could potentially purchase this token, but at the same time you could get it as a reward. You got it for free, you would have to use it. So there are different type of incentivization that you could have. You could invite more people other than us blockchain people, right? That's the way to mass adoption.
I think it's one of those things, you know, the road to mass adoption, it doesn't actually need to happen first in the United States. Or it doesn't need to happen where the services are already good, right? Like, if you come and you say, you know, when I have this conversation with people and they're like, well, I can't imagine my grandma ever using it, right? And I'm like, well, if your grandma lived in Venezuela, where there's like nearly 1,000,000% inflation this year, right? Where you know, there's like toilet paper costs more to buy, like you're better off wiping your butt with the money. In those cases, it makes a lot of sense to use the currency. And once more and more of those cases emerge, right, then it becomes easier for the cases, you know, in the United States and the established first world where services are good to adopt it, right? The capital costs, right, the upfront cost will have been paid in all of the places where the incentives were the highest. And so now that the incentive, you know, where the places are that the incentives are slightly lower, the barriers will have been reduced by the efforts of the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think, yeah, to me it's about turning people into crypto people and that value proposition, right? And so, like when I first got into the space, like I was kind of sold on the idea that everyone could be using blockchain technology as like a back end, essentially, and never know about it. And now I've kind of shifted, and I really think that almost the power of it comes from an appreciation for it, essentially the sovereignty that it grants you as an individual. And so, yes, I see a huge case for adoption in informal economies, but I guess I see, like, I personally, even in the US, the banking system is pretty tough, like not relative to, like, say, Venezuela, without a doubt, but it's definitely tough enough for me to view crypto as an alternative.
Yeah, and to expand on that, it's also like, who is the banking system the most tough for, right, in the United States? So like, for example, sex workers, you know, sex workers are like already cypherpunks. They have multiple identities. They use anonymous email services like Proton Mail. They're used to dealing with large quantities of cash. They lie to their bankers about what they do. So for them, like, cryptocurrency is a one-way ticket, right? And for most people, right? Once like what David was saying is like, it's not just like, oh, you know, there's some people who you'll just use crypto and never know about it. It's like, there's people who, once you get into crypto, you stay in crypto forever, right? And that means that it's just a matter of time, right? So getting, you know, for sex workers, it has like very clear advantages, right? Because you don't have to wait, you can get paid up front, you can do escrow systems, stuff like that, that you couldn't even do with cash. So it's actually improving their lives, and you can transfer it, sell it, etc. So people don't, I mean, especially all of us here, right? We have privilege. We probably are educated. We might be doing this just to get rich, right? But the path to adoption, real adoption, is through the people who are doing it because they have to, because it's a means for them to get by.
At the moment, I'm only getting poorer, unfortunately. But yeah, one interesting insight is I recently read the news that in New York City, I believe it was New York, they're actually going to require shops and companies to accept cash again, because the problem was that a lot of people couldn't actually pay because they didn't have access to banking. So they're going back to cash so that also these people can be included in the financial system again, which is kind of a step against the paper or the paperless, cashless society, right? It's not inclusive enough. So crypto could potentially be a solution to that as well.
I prefer cash any day to plastic cards.
It's also more private, right? So how does one prevent centralization? Like, isn't centralization sort of a law of nature? Like, I think throughout history it's been proven extremely difficult to prevent centralization in services, in money, in power, in politics. How do we go about preventing that, and do we have the answers to it yet?
Well, just to open the forum, I think to some extent we do need centralization. I don't believe in everything becoming decentralized. All the information cannot be decentralized. There's a privacy issues to all these sensitive data issues. So starting from there.
To me, it all comes down to trust, essentially. Just up until fairly recently, the only way to get that trust was to essentially accumulate power and to build these large centralized systems that self-perpetuate themselves. Nation states exist because they essentially, people trust them, right? People want security, they want comfort. They want to trust that they'll be safe, right? And nation states provide this trust. And corporations
Until they don't.
Exactly. And corporations do this too. There's an internal and an external. And within the internal, there's more trust. You can disclose things, right? Externally, you need NDA, but internally, there's kind of a deeper trust. And you also have job security, hopefully, right? Once again, until you don't, especially as human labor becomes more and more commoditized. But it's just about trust. And now, with public blockchain technology, we're able to shift that trust. And so, I guess, to me, that removes the primary reason for these gigantic monolith centralized systems, or at least a lot of them, because now we can get the trust without them by crowdsourcing it.
So you said it's a law, is centralization a law of nature, right? And I think the law of nature is closer to survival of the fittest. So the things that perpetuate are the things that were suited for survival at the time, right, within that context. So you might be in a context where there are no adversaries. And if there are no adversaries, then the most efficient system will win. So for something like Mt. Gox, right, I think, I don't know if you guys all remember this, but it got hacked and lost hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. And anybody who went through that experience came to understand the risk of centralization in the wake of powerful adversaries, right? So while, for a period of time, using Mt. Gox was the most efficient way, and Mt. Gox grew because of that efficiency, decentralized exchanges are being used by the people who don't want to lose all of their money in a centralized exchange, right? That's why they're doing it. And in the same way that communication system, the internet started, ARPANET was so that the military would be able to send messages in case one of the cities got nuked. Decentralization will be motivated by the existence of adversaries, where centralization is not the best way to survive.
To me, it kind of also, is similar to adoption, right? Where the biggest pitch for decentralized systems is centralized systems failing, essentially. And I mean, that's just a matter of time, right? They rise, topple, rise, topple.
I'll just come back to the reality. Well, decentralization, I love it. Redistribution of wealth, redistribution of power. However, the current system, will Facebook decentralize itself? Will this conglomerate, will this government? It's going to take time. But the great part is that we do have new economy arising in this decentralization where we could do our own quantitative easing, redistribute wealth, and we create our own economy. So I do have the bright future.
How many generations will it take us? Because the reason I'm asking the question is, if you're reading through the history of money, you'll see that no currency has been created in 10 years, like Bitcoin has been. Like the economy didn't accept that currency in 10 years all of a sudden everywhere where you or my kid will inherit Bitcoin from me and therefore learn about it and spend it in the shop?
I wouldn't use the past to predict the future in that way. Things are moving faster than ever before, right? I believe in my lifetime, with AI and like all this crazy innovation, I could live a long time, which is pretty awesome. We could be like sprinting at near light speed towards a world of paperclips. And so I guess, yes, kind of like the adoption and like crypto becoming more mainstream and more widely used could take a long time, but I definitely don't think it has to be, especially when like, right, once again, happy path, everything works, but I think at least most people in the societies with which we live don't see that it's a house of cards, and with essentially information becoming freer and freer, the fragility becomes more and more visible, and we approach a flippening, perhaps.
Or it might be just depends on the perspective, right? Nowadays we like the new term like digital currency instead of saying cryptocurrency. To consumers, it could be the same thing as mileage or points. They don't even have to recognize that this is blockchain-based cryptocurrency. What we need to just create is the other retail stores that accepts crypto and good custodian services that does the clearing part for the retailers to accept. If that's in place, I think the adoption could happen really quickly.
Earlier on, I mentioned that I'm getting poorer because we tend to think in crypto valuations in USD, right? Do you see that as a potential blocker for the adoption of cryptocurrencies, and how would we overcome that?
I don't really think that's a problem. I know that right now, you know, anybody who hodled this year is in a lot of pain, but I'm still extremely bullish on the long-term viability and adoption of cryptocurrency. And part of the reason is that every single new technology in history has been adopted faster than the previous set, right? Like, people compare crypto to the internet, right? But the difference is that when the internet was being built, they didn't have the internet to distribute it. Today, we have cryptocurrency, and it's growing at a much faster pace because it already has this communication infrastructure to be able to spread the word. Regarding the USD, I don't think that matters too much because, I mean, if like the dollar was, imagine a world where we all lost faith in the ability of the United States to back the US dollar. Or if central banks of other countries started publicly buying cryptocurrency. Hello? Okay. Started publicly buying cryptocurrency and talking about it, right? And there's sort of like a prisoner's dilemma between countries, right? If I'm the first country to publicly buy cryptocurrency, I will benefit way more than every single other country who then piles on because I probably bought it cheaper. So in those scenarios, the dollar price might go up, but that might not be because the cryptocurrency is, you know, more expensive. It's that the confidence in the dollar is falling, right? So I don't really think it matters.
Okay, so about the reference points, right? On our mall, again, what we are trying to do is give a specified, like for example, we sell fizzy water called Hushi water. For a box, we're going to say this 20 W Green Pay is just one box. Reference point, if we have to just look at the chart based on the US dollars, of course it's very gloomy, but does it have to be US dollars? More economy you create, like for example, you could pay your employees by the cryptocurrency. I know some developing countries started doing that even. And if you can purchase goods using the cryptocurrency, it doesn't have to be transferred to fiat, then we could just create our whole new economy based on it.
So for the BUIDLers in the room, what is the kind of decentralized financial service that you would love to see as an entrepreneur or as a citizen? What would you love someone in the audience to create?
Well, coming from the traditional banking, the cross-border transaction is one of the best things about cryptocurrency. You know, I mean, the government tries to control the flow of capital in and out. Cryptocurrency, you could be free from it, and I think without limiting, economy could even go for a brighter future with, you know, frictionless foreign direct investments even could happen. Expand the scope of economy.
Liquidity is really the name of the game, and so I would love more people spending time thinking about that and coming up with solutions or mechanisms to amass liquidity. I think that's one of the big things that is currently holding back decentralized exchanges.
Yeah, I downloaded an app today called the Gnosis Safe. Not sure if anybody's heard of that, but it's a multi-sig wallet, so it provides a smart contract that holds your funds instead of you know, having a private key that holds your funds. And then it has, you know, 3 private keys that are allowed to spend the money in the wallet so long as you sign a transaction with 2 of them, right? And so being able to put your money in that greatly improves the user experience of dApps across the board. Now for a decentralized application, like, I don't need to necessarily integrate it directly with a wallet. I can integrate it with my Gnosis Safe multi-sig wallet smart contract, and then the key, if I'm using it for a service, that will not have to hold any money, and if I lose it, it's fine. I can just get another one. I can revoke the access and assign other access, and the safe ends up being your whole bank, right? And that's the type of stuff that I think is really powerful, because that's one, it shows Ethereum's you know, the value of the programmability of the Ethereum blockchain, and secondly, it shows that the network effect of smart contract interoperability, right? Because once you get a service like that out there, then every single other application can use it and plug into it, and it makes every single other application more valuable.
One thing that I love about the Gnosis multisig in particular is kind of how it became a de facto standard for multisigs. And I love, like, it's relatively simple, but it's so valuable. And I think, like, a lot of projects and a lot of people tend to think very far into the future and have very grand visions. But I love how simple and useful it is, and the pragmatism of just creating that primitive that then people can use and build on. Yeah.
It's like a building block.
Yes.
All right, great answers. I would like to open up the questions to the audience. If any of you has an interesting question for any of the panelists, I'd love to hear. It's really hard to see you though.
혹시 질문 있으신가요?
말씀하신 얘기 잘 들었고요. 하신 얘기들이 다 공감은 되는데, 현재 암호화폐가 쓰이는 데 있어서 가장 문제점이 변동성이 심해서이고, 그래서 지금 스테이블 코인이 최근에 유행이고, 그다음에 KYC 인증이나 뭐 AML을 통해서 뭐 신원을 밝혀서 해킹을 막고 뭐 범죄를 막자 이렇게 말을 하는데, KYC나 AML을 하게 되면 뭐 해커의 경로를 추적할 수도 있고, 뭐 그런 범죄 같은 거에 대해서 막을 수 있는 신원이 확인되기 때문에 함부로 할 수는 없다는 건 알겠는데, 전 세계에 부를 쥐고 있는 건 80%가 쥐고 있고 나머지는 20%를 쥐고 있는데, 자본의 원활성을 위해서는 거대한 부가 들어와야 자본의 윤활성이 생길 텐데, 과연 신원이 확인됐을 때 자신의 부를 밝히기 위해서 암호화폐를 쓰려고 할지가 좀 의문이고요. 그리고 크립토 커런시가 활성화되는 방안이 스테이블하지 못한데, 그래서 스테이블 코인이 활성화되는 거고, 그러면 각 나라에서 지금 실물 자산인 달러, 위안, 뭐 엔 이런 식으로 해서 가치를 똑같이 매기는 화폐를 해서 크립토 커런시를 만들고 있는데 그럼 그 크립토 커런시를 통해서 뭐 그 거래에서 통해서 뭐 예를 들어서 USDT 테더란 통해서 뭐 N에 해당하는 토큰을 사고 거기에 해당하는 뭐 그 N 토큰을 가지고 일본에서 여행을 하고 쓸 수 있고 할 수 있겠죠. 근데 그게 진정한 암호화폐 시장일지가 좀 의문이거든요. 한 변동성 있는 토큰들을 가지고 시장이 활성화될 수 있을까요?
Maybe Youree can boil down the question to its essence so that we can.
I'll just answer in Korean. 지금 크립토커런시 그 암호화폐 중에 굉장히 다양한 화폐들이 나와 있죠. 코인이건 토큰이건 모든 토큰이 사실은 그 변동성에 전혀 영향을 받지 않고 그 생계를 유지할 수 있을 것 같지는 않고 다 각각의 그 특성을 갖고 있기 때문에 뭐 USDT, 뭐 테더 같은 그런 스테이블 코인도 있겠고 지금 현재 우리가 그렇게 믿었던 골드라고 생각했던 비트코인도 뭐 많이 다운되고는 있지만 그 시간이 결국은 어느 정도 해결이 될 수 있는 문제라고 생각이 되고요. KYC AML을 아예 배제하고 암호화폐를 거래하는 건 우리가 꼭 그걸 원해서가 아니라 현재 우리도 다 이게 국가라는 하나의 그 바운더리 안에서 생활을 하고 있는데 그걸 아예 없이 암호화폐를 거래한다. 그건 굉장히 이상적인 방향 생각이라고 생각됩니다. 그래서 그냥 현실적으로 생각을 했을 때 지금 그 암호화폐의 장점은 누구나 어떻게 보면 찍어낼 수 있다는 거고 거기에 대한 유동성이건 이 하나의 경제를 만드는데 다양한 주체들이 활동을 하고 거기에 대한 목적과 방향성을 설계로 할 수 있다는 게 암호화폐의 가장 큰 강점이라고 생각을 하고요. 그거에 대해서 하나의 경제를 만들었을 때 어떤 경제는 거기에 대한 뭐 리저브를 가져가건 뭔가 그 강력한 그 백단을 가지고 있어서 변동성 없이 유지를 할 수 있고 어떤 토큰 같은 경우는 변동성이 굉장히 있어서 실제 우리가 페이먼트로 쓰는 데는 문제가 되겠지만 또 다른 누군가에게는 이 토큰은 투자를 위한 목적성을 가질 수도 있고 암호화폐는 결론적으로 제 생각은 정말 다양한 목적성과 그 비전에 따라서 그리고 그걸 운영하는 사람들에 따라서 다양하게 계속 다양한 그 탈중화된 경제가 생겨나는 게 암호화폐의 장점이라고 생각을 하고요. 현재 우리도 이런 국가 안에서 생활을 하는 이유는 국가라는 그 센트럴된 시스템의 장점도 많이 있고 뭐 범죄나 여러 가지 그런 사회적인 문제에 대해서 우리도 보호를 받고 있기 때문에 이렇게 지금 국가라는 그 틀 안에서 사회생활을 할 수 있는 거라서 그런 이제 장점을 누리면서 AML과 KYC 이슈를 완전 배제하는 건 한계가 있는 아이디어라고 생각합니다. Did you guys understand?
Anybody being able to issue crypto is definitely new and exciting. To me, the big thing is anybody being able to use it. So as long as KYC and AML doesn't get in the way of that, sure.
I'm not sure if I completely correctly understood, but I believe one of the questions or statements also was that we have these stable coins right now that are pegged to US dollars. They're sort of inherently centralized, and we are using these tokens on exchanges and throughout the ecosystem. Is that a problem according to you, or is that just normal cost?
To me, it's part of a natural progression. As you said, like things take time, and it won't happen like the adoption and like widespread usage of only crypto won't happen overnight. And so to me, it's a middle ground and a good starting point. Yeah, and I'm glad there's like MakerDAO is so wonderful because it kind of provides an alternative to the full reserve fiat tether-like crypto that is the rage these days.
I think the asset of cryptocurrency is giving people the choice, right? You could choose from all different type of token and coins, whichever you want to use, based on its own economy and its stability or fluctuation and its future goal, the vision it has. So that's the point of decentralization.
It'd be really nice if a country came along and issued a stable coin that had privacy built in. I think that there would be a market for their currency because it would make it more competitive against other state-issued currencies that were not private. And the evidence to point to this is like cash doesn't have KYC, so it'd be really nice to have digital cash.
Yeah, I think it boils down to the answer that centralization and decentralization can live hand in hand, right? We have time for one or two more questions. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to ask anything? Nobody? Do you guys have a question for the audience maybe? Is there anything that you would like to ask, like any concerns that you would like to ask about decentralization or centralization that you have yourself, which maybe someone in the audience can answer?
Well, the idea of decentralization is based on my recent experience. I think decentralization on the current existing system also, not just the blockchain, but even like media, for example. I have some experiences with the media, how they could potentially distort so much facts and just put it out there, getting into defamation of informations. I would like to see a real decentralized media platform that actually has valid information that we can rely on.
I happen to know a team here in Korea was working on that. Is anyone working on that in the audience? Unfortunately not, but we'll connect afterwards. Do you see, one last thing, do you see any downsides to decentralization? Are there any potential negative aspects of it?
At least a lot of the protocols that are being built right now are fairly hard to change. Like on-chain governance and like kind of going in that direction, like all of a sudden you're kind of taking, at least in my view for now, a bit too much of the human out of the equation. And so, yeah, figuring out how to change and evolve these protocols effectively, I think is a really big issue that still needs a lot of work and thought put towards it. And yeah, it'll just be an evolving process because like we can't figure that out perfectly for centralized systems, right?
Yeah, I like to think of decentralization as an optimization. And as a programmer, I've come to understand that premature optimization is the root of all evil. So some things are often decentralized before they should be. People come up with an example for a service and then they're like, I want to do this in a decentralized way. And I'm like, well, no good centralized version of that exists. Like, why don't you just go do the centralized version of that? And then once you've done that, once people start to lose trust in you, somebody else can go build the decentralized version, right? That's what I would think.
All right, thank you very much. This was Ameen from Spankchain, David from OmiseGo, and Youree from W Foundation. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.